Welcome to the Queer Arabs podcast. This is Alia.
This is Nadia.
And I am currently based in DC. I am half Saudi. I with another co-host started this podcast back in March 2018. And yeah.
I'm Nadia. I am currently based in New York and I'm Lebanese American. I've been involved in this podcast for about a year. And basically, this podcast kind of sprung out of a need for a representation at the intersection of our identities, and has kind of expanded beyond that into creating a larger community. We are talking to people from throughout the Southwest Asian and North African region, as well as its diasporas, talking to queer artists, activists, and organizers, as well as anyone who might be even outside those communities who is doing work that aligns with our values of racial justice, sex positivity, and gender liberation. And we've been so excited to see all the people we've been able to connect to and creating these conversations. For instance, we have an awesome guest with us today.
Hi, everyone. My name's Danny, and I am one of the co-founders of a group called Rebuilding Beirut with Pride. And we're a UK-based we're a UK-based group, and we're trying to kind of rally as much of the LGBT community in the UK and kind of surrounding areas. And the aim is to kind of come together, have a big collective fund that we use to kind of empower, resource, and support kind of grassroots activists on the ground in Beirut.
Awesome. Amazing. Thanks so much. And just to give a little bit of context about how this collaboration started, we were considering what to do for this festival, for this opportunity. A lot of people were interested in hearing more about how the queer community in Beirut was being impacted now, particularly after the explosion, but also just during the multiple levels of crisis, including economic crisis that have been going on there. We didn't necessarily want to talk about that alone, but we also recognize that people on the ground there have more like urgent material things to deal with rather than dealing with talking about it in press and publicity, which some people have done. But we also want to maybe take on some of that work within the diaspora and see how we can kind of support on these less tangible fronts, which is kind of what we were thinking when we came across Rebuilding Beirut with Pride, can you just tell us a little bit more about how that started, how you got involved, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's funny because we've done a lot of kind of press bits around it. And I think from the first time they were asking me how did it start and me ending the phone call in tears to like now I've like got a little, I've got my line. But I think, to be honest, it's a bit of a difficult one because it started out as kind of a response to what had happened in Beirut. So obviously the explosion and the blast didn't only kind of shake up the country, but just everyone that has any connection to it. I think it was so triggering because of obviously kind of historical context of Lebanon and kind of that image of something so horrific just kind of being... We grew up with that image and we're kind of, and we have that as a reference point in our head. And even kind of speaking about it, I'm getting a bit of goosebumps, but we grew up with that kind of image of Beirut as a destruction zone. And that's whether you've lived in Lebanon or whether you lived outside of it and have been kind of subjugated to stereotypes of what Beirut is. So I think a lot of people seeing that, not even knowing any context behind it, whether it was an attack, whether it was anything, just provoked such a strong emotional kind of reaction from everyone. That we were just kind of left really hopeless. There was kind of no glimpse of what's to kind of come next. We were so afraid for everyone kind of back home, and I'm speaking from a diaspora perspective, but we're so afraid of kind of everything going back home, and we honestly just feared the worst. And like you said, this was a country kind of already on the brink of absolute collapse. Like the lira, the kind of hyperinflation of our currency, coupled with kind of it just political unrest. They obviously have the photo that started on the 17th of October, and that's kind of continued. And obviously with Corona and just so many different layers that we all just kind of felt that this was kind of the final nail in Lebanon's coffin, if you will. And so I'll be honest, that first day was just absolute devastation. I mean, I don't think I've ever kind of spoken to my mom and heard her just so, there was just no emotion. There was just nothing kind of in her voice. And And I think that's what kind of really hit me hard, because I've always kind of seen my mom as that kind of really strong person. And I think that's just really hit everyone. So what we needed to do was, we just immediately need to organize. And kind of my immediate thought, being kind of an activist based in the UK, and kind of largely an LGBT or migrant rights activist, and my immediate thought was to go to my community, my LGBT community, the queer community in the UK. And largely because I almost knew I could rely on that, on my community, to kind of help my other one. The queer community has a really long and proud history of international solidarity, and I think this was no different. So this really just kind of came about out of a collective need to do something, and kind of a pulling of resources within the network that we have kind of here. So Beirut, Rebuilding Beirut with Pride came about, and it was a long-winded answer. But the aim of it is really just to, it's in the name, help rebuild Beirut, but through kind of the celebration of Arab and queer talent. So whether that is art, whether that is music, whether that is performance, what we've tried to do is kind of create a platform to amplify these voices, but also do it in a really kind of constructive and proactive way that channels it into something useful for our country back home.
Awesome. Can you talk about some of the ways that you have been doing that? So you have a page on Instagram, and then there's an event coming up on Saturday. Can you describe that for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, this just started off as we were going to raise 3,000, 5,000 pounds. And then like 2 weeks later, we've raised 20,000 pounds, and we haven't even kind of started selling art or kind of had the event, which is absolutely amazing. Yeah. And really taken away by all the support. So what we're going to be doing is a number of things. So yesterday we launched our online art shop and auction. And so that is kind of an open platform for artists from all over the world, whether they're queer, whether they're Arab, or whether they're allies, to submit art and prints to be as part of that. Since launching yesterday, we've already sold about £1,000 worth of print. All proceeds go immediately there. Get that coin, and I am getting that coin, sis. That was kind of the art side of things. And then that's leading up to an auction on Saturday. And that's going to be kind of an online auction for anywhere in the world to kind of take part. And we've really kind of chosen some really beautiful kind of pieces specifically relating to kind of Lebanon, and kind of also kind of our emotional responses to all of that. Then that night we have a night of performances, and we have a different kind of queer and Arab talent taking part. So we have Amru Al-Qadi, otherwise known as Glamru, a really kind of well-known performer. I think they've done something similar on this on this podcast, and they'll be headlining the night. Other kind of performers are taking part, and the idea really is just get everyone in a space, celebrate all the talent that we have in our community, and then put it towards a good cause. But that is just the first step. We have our next event planned on the 25th of September. We have other art auctions going up into that. We're working with Lebanese musicians at the moment to create kind of an album for Beirut that we're trying to looking to sell as well. So what we're really trying to do is just create kind of this collective of queer Arab talent that uses kind of what resources we have, and what networks we have to kind of send back straight home.
Awesome. Yeah,
honestly, I'm just so impressed by like how quickly y'all have organized and gotten on this. It's really amazing. Because like you were saying, like it doesn't, obviously it affects people currently in Lebanon the most, but all of us are impacted. Anyone who's Lebanese or connected to Lebanon, I'm sure, has not been having the most functional week. And I've struggled with this personally. Like immediate crisis responses aren't my strength, and especially haven't been my strength lately. And I do like remind myself, I guess this is going to connect to what you're going to be talking about next, because yes, it is an immediate crisis, but it's going to be so much more than that. And we're needed for also the continued work that's going to be going on. But just as like, as a first step, I've been so impressed by people who have been able to, while they're still processing all of this, whether they're there or whether they're outside the country, have been able to, organize and do something so quickly.
And it wasn't. I think you're making it sound. I mean, it's not as.
I'm not saying like people who have been doing things are okay. I don't think so at all. But yeah.
But it's exactly like you said. I think it was difficult for anyone to kind of think about how we can channel it, because like you said, it was so devastating. It was so devastating on every level that, in a sense, this was my coping mechanism. And I mean, I've always put I always put my hands up and to say, I mean, everyone does have their own kind of mental health issues, and kind of mine are no different. And I think anybody with kind of mental health issues, this specific crisis have kind of exacerbated that. So I think a lot of people have had to kind of navigate through it and try to kind of create their own coping mechanisms. And I guess this was one of mine, as was my mum's cleaning up the streets. I can imagine any other Lebanese. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm not trying to imply that anyone who's doing projects is okay, because I know that is not how it goes at all. But yeah, it's a coping mechanism that is actively doing a lot of good for a lot of people. So I'm really impressed by that. And yeah, but like you said, no one. I think there's also been kind of this breaking down of like the resilience narrative. You kind of said this was like the last nail. And I think whether that's true or not, like a lot of people are feeling that. People have been saying, oh, the Lebanese people are so resilient, which is kind of fucked up on so many levels. Like that's kind of implies that people are meant to deal with this kind of shit. No one's meant to deal with this kind of shit. And
resilient to who? Resilient to what? It's just this continue, and you hear it so much. Oh, the Lebanese are used to it. Well, no one should be.
Recurring trauma doesn't get better. It gets worse. That's not how it goes.
It really does. It really, and it's collective trauma at that. It's like the entire country has kind of gone through so much, and we've gotten to a point that our trauma is so collective that everyone just sees it as the norm. And I think that's what's so fucked up about it. Yeah.
Okay. But back to the project.
Sorry, we're gonna get a bit angry.
Yeah. But no, this is part of it too. But yeah, back to the project. Can you tell us more about like what you're planning kind of in the later stages as this goes on?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, like I said, I think we've just been taken taken aback by just the amount of support. So like, for example, the way that it kind of was not forced into it, but the way that this kind of was brought into mind was one of my friends here in the UK, British, not Lebanese, kind of nothing to do with it, literally just texted me and said, I've already gotten in touch with a pub. I've booked you a venue. Let's do a fundraiser. This is the only way it's going to kind of get you out of your rut. And that's what kind of started it off. And that theme of just absolute selfless giving and kind of stepping up and saying, I want to do something, has been so consistent throughout this project. And there is not at one point where we could have said that one or two or three of us could have kind of achieved what we have at this point, because it's just been kind of this collective effort. So next steps, we have been approached by a hotel who have offered to give us a ballroom for our next an event. It's kind of off-brand, but hey, we're there for it. We've also been approached by, like I said, kind of different musicians looking to also kind of take part. So we're trying to kind of broaden outside of just kind of prints and art and photograph and things like that. So while we're still kind of regrouping, because like I said, we're getting so much support, our kind of long-term vision of this is really just kind of a collective and a fund that is kind of organized here in the UK, kind of our allies across Europe, across the world. But what we do is we use this fund to really kind of empower and support these grassroots initiatives on the ground. So really early on kind of in this, when the crisis happened, we went out and said, who can we give our money to? We want to fundraise, who do we give it to? And a lot of people on the ground said, well, just give it to kind of NGOs, not kind of LGBT specific NGOs, but just NGOs that'll kind of go out and do things anyway. And some things might pop up, and they have. So there's the kind of transgender relief fund, which has popped up. Amazing. They've raised about £70,000. There's the emergency relief fund for LGBTQ victims, led by Sandra Milhem. They've raised about £30,000, both of which are kind of beneficiaries of our crowdfund as well. Okay. But these things are kind of, they're popping up. So now kind of for the next one that we want, there's already established network of activists on the ground that are doing such amazing work that it'll be a lot easier to kind of channel what we want to do and how much we want to write into those projects. And they really are doing amazing work. You have Dana Ash from Haven for Artists, who's kind of created a shelter for LGBT and transgender victims. You've had everyone kind of coming together, and these systems are now building up, and they're creating these kind of systems of support, which is absolutely fantastic. So our next step here is whatever we can do through the celebration of queer Arab talent in order to kind of support, fund, resource them, and kind of ensure that they get the kind of awareness and recognition that they need.
Amazing. Okay, so this is something that to me is obvious, but I'm going to ask it because it's a question I've seen asked a lot. Your fundraiser isn't LGBT specific, but some aspects of it are. And I've seen some people like looking at those GoFundMes and questioning like, why are queer people particularly impacted? Why isn't this a general fundraiser? Again, I can see a lot of reasons why they are, but yeah, do you want to talk about that from your perspective?
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's a totally fair question. We are getting a lot of people saying, well, why specifically LGBT? And here's why. The LGBT community in Lebanon, specifically the transgender community, specifically transgender women in the community, are so seriously disproportionately impacted. Outside, remove this crisis altogether, remove the explosion altogether. Trans women are not allowed. Trans people are not allowed to work in Lebanon unless they're the way they present their gender matches their gender identity certificate or the equivalent of that. It's really hard to gain kind of safe access to healthcare. Even if you're looking at kind of the LGBT community, those who are kind of outwardly queer find it really difficult kind of, again, to gain employment, to have kind of safe access to healthcare, but also kind of just safety and kind of being kind of on their own. And a large part of that kind of comes down to, and you might also say all Lebanese don't have that kind of support network. There's no central government, there's no healthcare system, etc. But what Lebanese, the majority would do have is almost a family support network. As with all Arab cultures, a lot of the support you get is from your family. And unfortunately, because of kind of societal taboos, because of the culture and kind of the stereotypes and kind of, you know what I mean, around kind of LGBT identities, a lot of those people have been removed from that family support structure. So if we're looking at kind of any kind of group in Lebanon, and I'm not saying we need to rethink about how we rebuild Lebanon with just LGBT people and kind of centered in that, but I think they need to be a part of that. I think they need migrant women need to be a part of that, how we redesign the country. We need to identify who are the most vulnerable people in our society, the most vulnerable people in Beirut, who have been disproportionately impacted before this event and now have been absolutely exacerbated all of their problems. We need to when we're thinking about rebuilding Beirut, not just physically, but also conceptually as a community that each of us can feel a part of, we need to be putting those people at the center of that in order to actually create a community that's equal to all and it's inclusive to all. And this is me not being a diversity and inclusion advisor, which I am, but I really do think that with any the way we approach any situation, we need to be putting the most vulnerable at the heart of that situation in order to create any kind of equitable solution. And I think this is no different. Lebanese LGBT community have been so oppressed. And I think this just has completely wiped out whatever structures they've built, whether it's our physical spaces. So Madame a really well-known lesbian and kind of trans-inclusive space, completely destroyed. Marem Khail, Jamaisi, the two kind of LGBTQ hubs of Beirut, completely destroyed, just 200 meters away. So we as a community have been disproportionately impacted, both kind of in the spaces that we've built, in the communities that we've created, and also kind of the support networks that we've really relied on. All of that's kind of starting to fall apart. And then that's why why LGBTQ people need to be the heart of this.
Thank you. That was beautifully explained. I mean, I know so many people who are like, either like, they're like, I can't, because everyone in a time when so many people are being displaced, and it is a lot of familial networks where it's like, oh, my house is wrecked, but I'm going to go to my aunt, etc. It's like, there's so many people who are like, I can't go to my family, or maybe like a slightly more privileged, but also just shitty position is I have to go home to my family and be closeted. Yeah.
Which is the case for many people who have had to go back home.
Yeah. You've also brought up, migrant workers being another vulnerable group. Do you plan to address that group specifically in your fundraiser as well?
That's a good question. And I think that's something to absolutely kind of think about and embed into it. I think moving forward, we were thinking about kind of specifically targeting kind of LGBT groups. So we're in discussions with Helem at the moment to see if kind of they need any kind of specific help. But to be honest, you saying that has actually kind of brought it up wider. Us as an LGBT community, it's almost meaningless to just say we stand shoulder to shoulder with our LGBTQ siblings, because what is that without again, solidarity with the most vulnerable. And we're almost shoulder to shoulder with them conceptually in the eyes of Lebanese in terms of our rights. If not, we have a bit more. And I think you're absolutely right. And that's something that I'll be looking into take forward. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Is there, or I'll let you talk. I've been talking for a while.
Oh, no. I want this to be mostly you two. Okay, so do you want to talk about the new page that you just launched, RBP? Oh. RBP auction. Do you want to talk about like the function of that page and how it got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, really early on, we wanted to do this as, like I said, kind of celebration of queer art. And we really wanted to do some sort of auction, and in the process of kind of fundraising for Beirut, just kind of celebrating all the talent that's in our community. And the page that we launched yesterday, so RBP, Rebuilding Beirut with Pride, yeah, that's right, rbp.auction, is basically just a collective of all of that. So there's different prints that people have submitted from all over the world. We have custom prints that people have created specifically for Rebuilding Beirut with Pride. And so we're trying to sell as many of them as possible. You might have heard of kind of Art Queer Habibi, really well-renowned.
Yeah,
kind of, so they have really kindly donated a few prints. So it's just been such a beautifully kind of collective effort that everyone's been kind of giving. And it's not only just queer people, it's people. I got a random kind of artist in Texas who sent £3,000 worth of prints. Like
wow.
It's just, it honestly just taken aback. Like it's just been such a, people feeling that they have the responsibility to kind of step up and do what they can. And that's just been so beautiful.
Yeah, everyone.
So, right.
Yeah, everyone follow that. It's RBP auction.
Yes, please. Yeah. And we're hoping to continue this after this Friday. So if you are an artist, you'd like to get involved, if you're a photographer who'd like to submit, please get in touch. We'd love to kind of showcase your work and kind of raise some money from that.
Awesome. And then if anyone wants to attend the event on Saturday virtually, is that possible?
Yeah, so at the moment we originally planned to have a live stream. I think that's why I wanted to talk to you about, like, what is it, OBS afterwards. But,
yeah.
So we are currently planning on doing the live stream. We're having some logistical issues. We're kind of sorting it out. So we can we will be posting a link if that's the case. If not, we'll just be live streaming onto our Instagram page so people can keep up.
Perfect. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. You mentioned Glamour. We just had them on an episode, so that's cool.
They're amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you read their book?
No,
so we need to.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Definitely going to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've never recommended a book so much in every conversation I've ever had.
Ooh, okay.
I need to get on it. I haven't been great at just reading in general during quarantine.
Same.
But
I just haven't been able to focus like while reading, but maybe this is the book. Maybe,
honestly, this is the book.
Probably that.
Well, yeah.
It's just like, it's especially kind of almost true for also kind of people living abroad. So, and it kind of also hits home because like every page I was reading, I was like, wow, this is just describing me with my mom. This is just describing my relationship with this person. It's really, really recommend.
Awesome.
Okay.
And they're a fantastic person. Anyway, sorry, back to this.
Yeah.
I guess kind of like on that, on the note of like experiences living abroad, what have been kind of the reactions you've gotten so far in London during this fundraiser, whether from like the queer community who isn't necessarily like connected to Lebanon or is an Arab, or just from the general public?
Just honestly, absolute solidarity. Just really kind of taken aback. Whether it's people just donating, the deputy mayor of London donated like 300-400 quid. Like it's just been this, I keep saying this, but kind of collective solidarity, and it's just been so beautiful to see. But it really has been overwhelming.
That's amazing. Sometimes I feel like it's at least I'll speak for like, I don't know, US queer community, maybe like East Coast cities specifically. It can be hard to get people to develop like an international consciousness or like international solidarity and like kind of look beyond their own little queer bubble. But it's really cool to see that you've not found that to be the case where you are.
It's interesting because I think, like I said, like when I say kind of the queer community has a history of this kind of international solidarity, it is true for kind of internationally, but I think also in the UK, we've had some kind of key moments of queer people stepping up for kind of different people's rights. So like, for example, this t-shirt, it says, well, it's not the Gay Arab podcast, so I had to say it. So it says not gay as in happy, queer as in fuck your borders. And it's from a group called Lesbian and Gays Support the Migrants. Yes. And they're a really great grassroots groups that do everything from kind of direct action to physically kind of stopping planes, kind of deporting migrants and LGBT migrants. And this kind of stemmed from a 1980s group called Lesbian and Gays Support the Minors, which was a group of kind of London-based queer activists who, despite kind of rampant homophobia, got together and the LGBT community in London and the UK to raise funds for striking Welsh miners that were striking against Margaret Thatcher's government. So there's a really kind of strong history of this solidarity, and these things kind of scaffold and they build on each other. So a lot of the people involved in this have been helping out with this. And that's what I mean, kind of collective, beautiful solidarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck your borders. Fuck all the borders.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we're at about time. So thank you so much for doing this with us. So just a reminder to everyone, follow Rebuilding Beirut with Pride on Instagram, and then also rbp.auction. And then is there any other way that you want people to follow you, or is it mostly on Instagram?
So you can either kind of follow our Instagram at Rebuilding Beirut with Pride, or you can kind of also give straight to our GoFundMe at gofundme.com/rebuildingbeirut.
Perfect. And
a huge thank you to both of you, because this platform has been really great to kind of speak about some of these things.
Thank you so much for doing this. And then to keep in touch with us, you can go to thequeerarabs.com, and we're also The Queer Arabs on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Queer, not gay.
Fuck your borders.
Fuck your borders.
Fuck your borders.
Some of us might be gay too, but fuck your borders. Yeah.
Yeah. Gay, queer, whatever, no matter what. Fuck your borders.
It was a joke.
Even
fuck
if you're
borders,
like
whatever.
Like fuck all borders.
Yeah, if you're straight, fuck your borders.
If you're straight too, yeah. I wonder what it's like to be straight. Anyway, I don't know. I actually don't want to know.
That's a different podcast.
That's a whole, Thanks all. Thanks for listening.
Thank you both.